The water in the concrete basin was 3 degrees above freezing. Maya Reese could feel it through her gloves, through her skin, through everything. Her hands were numb, had been numb for the last hour, but she kept scrubbing, kept working the stiff brush across the jute fabric of her ghillie suit. The diesel fuel and mud mixture was designed to strip away scent, to dull the synthetic sheen, to transform fabric into something that belonged to the earth. 20 other trainees worked beside her, a line of bodies bent over identical basins. The scraping of brushes on canvas was rhythmic, hypnotic, the only sound in the gray Colorado dawn. This was the ghillie wash, the ritual, the baptism before the final trial. Maya's mind wasn't on the cold. It was replaying a moment, a failure, the click of an empty chamber. Phase 2, the hostage scenario. 400 meters, 90 seconds on the clock. The high-value target standing 2 inches from a simulated civilian contractor. She'd had the shot. The math was perfect. Wind, 0. Distance, confirmed. Breathing, controlled. But she'd waited for that moment when the separation would be perfect, when there would be 0 risk, when the certainty would be absolute. The timer had expired at 5 seconds. Click. The sound echoed in her memory louder than any gunshot. There are 2 types of people who come to this course. The voice cut through the dawn like a blade. Sergeant Marcus Thornton. He moved down the line with the inevitability of winter. He didn't need to raise his voice. His presence did the talking. He was 52, looked older. 3 tours in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan. Before that, the first Gulf War, when he was barely 20. His hair was gray, his face was leather, his eyes were Arctic blue and missed nothing. He stopped behind Maya's basin. She could feel him there, a weight pressing down on the air. Hunters, he continued, his voice quiet, conversational, and hiders. Maya kept scrubbing. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Hiders are meticulous. They love the math. They love the camouflage. They love the idea of the shot. He paused. They love everything except pulling the trigger. He crouched. His knees popped. The sound was loud in the silence. Reese. She stopped scrubbing, met his eyes. They were the color of glacial ice. You have the best metrics in this class, Thornton said, almost gently. Best wind calls, best stalks, best hide construction. Top scores across the board. He pulled a tablet from his cargo pocket, tapped the screen, turned it so she could see. The video was grainy, training footage, her position during Phase 2. The overhead showed her perfect setup, perfect position. The chronometer in the corner showed 60 seconds remaining. 50, 40. The crosshairs never wavered. The target stayed centered. 30 seconds, 20, 10, 5, click. Thornton turned off the tablet, slipped it back into his pocket. You had the shot at 60 seconds. You chose to wait. His voice was flat, clinical. You know what we call that in the field? Maya's jaw tightened. Her knuckles were white around the brush. Target fixation. Thornton stood. His shadow fell over her again. You got so focused on achieving perfect conditions that you forgot the mission. The hostage died. The HVT escaped. And you? He paused. You died too. Because while you were calculating, his partner flanked your position. He gestured to the ridgeline behind them. An OP4 instructor stood there, laser designator in hand. The red dot had been on Maya's back the entire time. Good math, Reese. Terrible execution. Thornton's voice carried down the line. Every trainee heard. You're a hider, not a hunter. He moved on. The scrubbing resumed, harder now, more frantic. Maya plunged her hands back into the freezing water. The cold was sharp now, invasive. It matched the emptiness in her chest. A plastic brush dropped into her basin. She looked up. Corporal Ethan Briggs stood beside her. Wiry, sandy hair, quiet eyes that seemed older than his 26 years. He didn't say anything, just pushed the fresh brush toward her. Hers was worn flat, useless. "Thanks," she whispered. He nodded once, went back to his own work. It was the only kindness this place allowed. The briefing room smelled of floor wax and stale air. 21 trainees sat in rigid rows. Their ghillie suits were still damp, rolled tight in their packs. The smell of diesel and mud filled the space. Maya sat in the third row, Ethan beside her. Her hands were still numb from the wash. She flexed them, balled them into fists, released. The blood flow was painful, necessary. Sergeant Thornton stood at the front beside a projected image, a topographical map of the mountains surrounding Fort Carson. Red lines marked 13 lanes, 13 approaches, 13 tests. Phase 3, Thornton said. His voice was sharp, authoritative. Live fire qualification. There are no resets, no do-overs. You fail an objective, you are dropped from the course. Clear? Hoo-ah, the room chorused. Maya's voice was lost in the crowd. Rules of engagement, Thornton clicked to the next slide. This is what separates us from murderers. ROE is not optional. It is absolute. He paced. His boots were silent on the tile. 1. Positive identification. PID. I don't care what your spotter says. I don't care what you think you see. You must have 100% confirmation of your target before your finger touches that trigger. His voice hardened. You smoke a civilian, a friendly, or any non-combatant, and I will personally ensure you spend the rest of your contract scrubbing latrines. Maya's hands clenched on her knees. PID. The very thing that had made her wait. The reason for the click. 2. Collateral damage. Your target is a simulated high-value target. He will be accompanied by 2 hostage mannequins. Your shot must be clean. Hit a hostage, you fail. Damage the support structure, you fail. This is surgical. The next slide showed the map again. 13 lanes spiraling up into the Rockies. 2-man teams. You will infiltrate under cover of darkness. You will establish a final firing position. You will wait. He let the word hang. At 0900 hours, 48 hours from now, your target window opens. It will remain open for exactly 90 seconds. 90 seconds. Maya's breath caught. Not an hour, not 10 minutes. 90 seconds to find the target, confirm PID, account for wind, coordinate with her spotter, and fire one perfect shot. Lane assignments. Thornton clicked again. A list appeared, names paired with numbers. Maya's eyes scanned down, found hers. Reese, M. / Briggs, E. Lane 13. The room went quiet. A few heads turned, looked at her. Lane 13, Jackal's Graveyard, 1,800 meters. Plagued by cross-canyon winds and unpredictable downdrafts. The hardest lane, the one that had broken 12 teams last year. Ethan leaned close. His whisper was barely audible. He's isolating you. I can handle it, Maya whispered back. It's not about handling it. Ethan's voice was tight. He gave you the impossible shot. One last thing. Thornton's voice cut through the murmurs. Weather officer is predicting a significant storm front, moving in faster than expected. This is an opportunity. Use it for infiltration. But it also means communications will be compromised. He clicked to the final slide. It was blank except for one line. MCON, 24 hours. To simulate deep infiltration conditions, all teams will maintain strict emissions control for the first 24 hours. No radio traffic. None. You are dark. You are behind enemy lines. You are alone. His Arctic eyes swept the room. You will not power on your radios until 0700 tomorrow for final check-in. 24 hours. No contact. No support. Just her, Ethan, and the mountain. Maya stared at the map. Lane 13 snaked up the ridgeline. 1,800 meters from firing position to target zone, through terrain that funneled wind into chaos. This is the test, Thornton finished. His voice was quiet now, almost gentle. This is the line. Half of you won't cross it. His eyes found Maya, held her. Prove me wrong. He shut off the projector. The room dimmed. Gear up. Phase 3 is live in 30 mics. Good hunting. The room erupted into motion. Chairs scraped. Packs were shouldered. Maya stood slowly. Her legs felt wooden. Ethan stood beside her. His face was unreadable. Lane 13, he said quietly. Just our luck. Maya shouldered her pack. 70 pounds of gear. The rifle in its scabbard felt like an anchor. It's just math, she said. Her voice was tighter than she wanted. Wind velocity, distance, elevation. Variables in an equation. Right. Ethan didn't sound convinced. Just math. They filed toward the door. The wind hit Maya as soon as she stepped outside. It tore at her uniform, carried the smell of pine and snow and ozone. The storm was coming. The approach to Lane 13 started at the base motor pool. Twilight was dying. The sky was bruised, purple and gray. The storm front loomed on the horizon like a wall. Maya and Ethan stood at the rally point. 12 other teams were scattered across the staging area. Some were doing last-minute gear checks. Others were already moving out. Ghosts fading into the tree line. Thornton appeared beside them, silent. He had a way of materializing without warning. Reese. His voice was low, meant only for her. She turned, met those ice-blue eyes. Your father, aerospace engineer, worked on guidance systems for Lockheed Martin. It wasn't a question. He'd read her file. He taught you to trust numbers, to calculate variables, to find certainty in chaos. Yes, Sergeant. Thornton was quiet for a moment. The wind pulled at his uniform. In 2004, Fallujah, I had a spotter, kid from Texas, math genius, could calculate trajectories in his head faster than most people could work a ballistic computer. His voice was distant, remembering. He saved my life 3 times with that brain, spotted threats I couldn't see, called shots I couldn't make. He looked at the mountains, the darkness gathering there. He also died because he thought too much and moved too slow. We were extracting under fire. He stopped to calculate the optimal egress route. Took him 45 seconds. Thornton's jaw tightened. The RPG took him in 30. He turned back to Maya. His eyes were hard. I'm giving you Lane 13 because I believe you can make the shot. Question is, do you believe it? He paused. And when that 90-second window opens, will you pull the trigger or will you calculate until the moment passes? Maya held his gaze. Her heart was hammering. I won't hesitate, Sergeant. We'll see. He stepped back. Move out. Clock's running. Maya and Ethan merged into the darkness. The tree line swallowed them. Behind them, the lights of Fort Carson began to glow against the gathering night. They were alone now. Darkness was total. Not the manageable darkness of a base with ambient light. This was the absolute black of wilderness, of mountains that didn't care if you lived or died. Maya moved her left foot forward, 6 inches. She didn't place it, she tested it, felt for the shift of rock, the crunch of gravel, the snap of a branch. The instructors, the OP4 observers, were out there somewhere, hidden in the black. Their night vision optics could see what she couldn't. One sound, one mistake, and the exercise was over. She found solid ground, transferred her weight, began the agonizingly slow process of moving her right knee. 3 hours into the stalk, they had covered maybe 800 meters. Lane 13 was brutal, a jagged scar of scree and shattered granite. Every step was a negotiation with gravity. Behind her, Ethan's breathing was perfectly synchronized with hers. Inhale, hold, exhale, move. It was the sniper's rhythm, the cadence of patience. The cold was invasive now. It had stopped being an external thing. It lived in her joints, in her lungs. Her fingers, even in thermal gloves, were wooden. She flexed them constantly. A sniper with numb fingers was useless. Numb fingers couldn't feel a trigger, couldn't execute the delicate 2-pound pull that separated life from death. A sharp edge of granite pressed into her hip bone. The pain was bright, immediate. She ignored it. Pain was just information. It didn't matter. The weight of Ethan's trust pressed heavier than her pack. He was a good spotter, quiet, competent. He'd washed out of his first attempt at the course. Not for lack of skill. He'd challenged an instructor on a bad wind call. He'd been right. But being right didn't matter when you broke the chain of command. He was back now, second chance, last chance, and he was paired with Thornton's hider. A sound cut through the wind, faint, metal on rock. 50 meters to their right. Maya froze. Not just stopped moving, she ceased to exist, flattened herself against the ground, merged with the shadows, her ghillie veil pulled over her rifle. She held her breath, listening. The wind moaned through the rocks, covered everything. But the sound had been real, deliberate, an OP4 instructor, testing them. Beside her, Ethan was a motionless lump, indistinguishable from the terrain. Maya waited. 1 minute, 2. Her lungs burned. She let out her breath in a slow, controlled stream that wouldn't fog in the cold. Wouldn't give away her position. Nothing. Just the wind and the darkness. She began to move again, inches per minute. The stalk was meditation, punishment, a test of will that had nothing to do with shooting and everything to do with the ability to endure. After another hour, they reached a small defilade, a shallow depression that offered minimal cover from the wind, but maximum concealment from observation. This was their pre-planned halt point, their hide for the next few hours. They slid into the depression back to back, offering 360-degree security. Maya carefully unzipped a side pouch on her pack, pulled out her spotting scope, set it up on its miniature tripod, kept it low. They were dark, no comms, no heat, just two ghosts waiting for dawn. Good movement. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper, pitched to travel no more than 2 feet. Heard you slip, Maya whispered back. She was scanning the dark ridgeline ahead. Lane 13's final firing position was still 500 meters above them. Small slide. Thought it was OP4. That was me, he admitted. You heard that over this wind? She kept her eye pressed to the scope. The rubber cup was cold against her skin. Train for it. Ethan was silent for a moment. The wind howled, buffeted their small position. Thornton's wrong about you, Reese. Maya stopped scanning. He's right. I hesitated. I choked. No. Ethan's voice was firm, but quiet. I read the after-action report. You had a 2-inch separation. You were processing collateral risk. You didn't hesitate. You were being precise. There's a difference. She turned her head slightly, couldn't see his face in the dark, just his outline. My brother, Ethan said. His voice changed, became something else. Kyle, Army Ranger, Helmand Province, 2011. Maya waited, let him talk. Battalion commander wanted an HVT eliminated. Time pressure. Intel was sketchy, but the push came down. Take the shot. Kyle had doubts about positive ID. The target matched the description, but something was off. Wrong age, wrong movement patterns. Ethan shifted. The nylon of his pack whispered. He took the shot anyway. Orders are orders. Time pressure is time pressure. A pause. It was a shepherd, 62 years old. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong everything. Maya's chest tightened. Kyle came home 6 months later, ate his service pistol in a motel room outside Fort Benning. The wind filled the silence. I trust your process, Reese, Ethan said quietly, because I know what rushing looks like. I know what it costs. His voice was hard now, certain. You're not a hider, you're a calculator. And in this job, that's not a weakness, it's the whole damn point. Maya turned back to her scope, Her throat was tight. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't let Thornton get in your head. He's testing you, breaking you down to see if you'll rebuild stronger. Ethan paused. He only does that to the ones he thinks can actually make it. They fell into silence. The sniper's silence. A shared patience. Maya watched the darkness. Her mind worked through the variables. Lane 13, 1,800 meters, cross-canyon winds, unpredictable downdrafts, a 90-second window, and somewhere in the equation, the click, the memory of failure, the frozen trigger finger. First light was 90 minutes away. Dawn came slowly, a gradual transition from absolute black to charcoal gray. The storm hadn't hit yet, but Maya could feel it building, a pressure in the air, a quality to the wind. Through her spotting scope, the ridgeline emerged from shadow, 500 meters above them. The V-notch position, two massive granite boulders forming a natural gun sight. It offered a clear line of sight to the target zone, 1,800 meters distant. It was also completely exposed to the wind. There, Maya whispered, her breath fogged. She wiped the optic with her glove. V-notch, 500 meters up. Ethan pressed his eye to his own scope. Miserable spot. Only option. They moved. The stalk degraded into a desperate low crouch. The wind was a physical force now, shoving at them, trying to peel them from the mountain. 30 minutes of climbing. Every step was agony on frozen muscles. The 70-pound pack felt like it weighed twice that. Maya's hip injury from the night's crawl screamed with each movement. They reached the V-notch, collapsed into its meager shelter. This was it, their final firing position. For the next 30 hours, this 2-meter by 1-meter patch of frozen rock was their entire world. Hasty hide, Ethan grunted. He pulled camouflage netting from his pack. No time for proper construction. Won't matter. Maya's voice was clipped, mechanical. Storm will cover us better than any hide. They worked with grim efficiency, stretched the netting, anchored it to rocks with carabiners, draped their ghillie veils over the top, created a low, cramped cocoon that broke the wind and shattered their outline. Maya slid into position, her rifle already set up on its bipod. The cold metal was familiar, comforting. She chambered around. The snick of the bolt was solid, final. She pressed her eye to the scope. 1,800 meters away, barely visible through the swirling gray, was the target zone. A mock-up compound, concrete structures, a watchtower. No movement, just wind and snow. The clock was running. 0700 tomorrow. 24 hours until the comms dark period ended. 48 hours until the 90-second target window. Ethan settled beside her with his spotting scope. His job now was to observe, to rest, to be her second set of eyes, her backup brain. Her job was to wait. The first hour was tense, adrenaline still high from the insertion, her senses sharp, alert. The fourth hour was agony. The cold was no longer external. It had burrowed into her bones, become part of her. Her joints ached. Her lungs burned with each breath of sub-zero air. Her fingers were the worst. Even in thermal gloves, they were going numb. She had to constantly flex them, ball them into fists, release. The process was painful, blood forcing its way into frozen tissue. But numb fingers couldn't pull a trigger, couldn't execute the precise 2-pound press that was the difference between success and failure. Click. The memory surfaced. Unwanted, unwelcome. Phase 2, the timer counting down. Her crosshairs perfect, her breathing controlled, her math flawless. And the click of the empty chamber when the moment passed. You're a hider, Reese. Maya squeezed her eyes shut, forced them open. Focus. Through the optic, the swirling snow created phantom movements. Was that an OP4 observer? She held her breath, analyzed the shape. No, just a branch, whipped by the wind. This was the test within the test, not the shot, the mental game. the loneliness, the ability to stay focused when every instinct screamed to move, to seek warmth, to do something. Swap, she grunted. My watch, Ethan replied. They traded optics. She took the spotter scope. He settled behind the rifle. A 5-minute break for her eyes. Nothing more. Maya pulled her data book from her breast pocket. The waterproof paper was stiff, the pencil slippery in her numb glove. She began to write, record, calculate, wind, gusting 30 to 40 knots, variable. Temperature, estimated 5 degrees Celsius, wind chill significantly lower. Visibility, 400 meters, degrading. The calculations were a refuge, clean, logical, pure. The math didn't care if she was cold. The math didn't judge her for the click. The math just was. Trust the process. Her father's voice. From when she was 12 years old, learning to shoot on their Montana ranch. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. The 10th hour, darkness fell again. The storm intensified. The wind wasn't a scream anymore. It was a physical presence. A solid wall of force that hammered their hide. The camouflage netting cracked like a bullwhip. This is bad. Ethan's voice was tight. This is worse than the briefing said. It's just wind, Maya said, trying to believe it. It's a blizzard. We're in a blizzard, Reese. The calm's dark rule, which had been a tactical constraint, now felt like something else. If an OP-4 found them, they couldn't call it in. If one of them went down to hypothermia, they couldn't call for extraction. They were completely, utterly alone. And the test had become something more than qualification. It had become survival. Check your fingers, Maya said. What? Your fingers, show me. Ethan reluctantly held up his hand. Even in the dim gray light filtering through the hide, Maya could see it. The tips of his index and middle fingers were waxy white, bloodless. Frostnip, the precursor to frostbite. Fists, she ordered. Now! Ball them! Force the blood! He began the exercise. His movements were stiff, reluctant. It's fine. It's not fine. You lose those fingers, you can't run the scope, can't call wind, can't do your job. He did as ordered. The pain of returning circulation was evident on his face. Maya turned back to her rifle scope. The frustration was a bitter taste. She was meticulous. She was prepared. She had calculated every variable, but she couldn't control the weather. She looked at her watch. 0658, 2 minutes until the comms window opened. 24 hours of isolation about to end. She reached for the radio. Her frozen thumb fumbled with the switch. This was it. Check in. Get the final brief. Confirm the 0900 target window was still on. She powered it on. 0700. Blackjack, this is Victor 1-3. Radio check. Over. The radio answered, but it wasn't Thornton's voice. It wasn't the expected response. It wasn't even static from the storm. It was a harsh, deafening electronic roar. A powerful, rhythmic jamming signal that pulsed with intelligent design. Deliberate, focused, hostile. Ethan stopped his finger exercises. He stared at the radio. That's not the storm, he whispered. Maya felt a cold dread that had nothing to do with temperature. She cycled through the channels, all of them. The same roaring pulse on every frequency. This wasn't atmospheric interference. This was sophisticated, military-grade electronic countermeasures. Blackjack, this is Victor 1-3, she tried again. Her voice was urgent now. How copy? Over. Only the jamming replied, a wall of noise, impenetrable. They were still dark, still alone. But now, they were something else. They were cut off. Maya's mind raced. She recognized the signature, AN/MLQ-40, Prophet, Russian electronic warfare system, capable of jamming communications across multiple bands simultaneously. ECM, she said. Her voice was flat. Heavy. This isn't on the training schedule. Ethan leaned over, listened to the speaker. His face was pale. It's Thornton, has to be. He's upping the stakes, testing us. Maya shook her head, her gut clenched. No, the power signature. To generate a signal that strong in this storm, you'd need a dedicated platform, vehicle mounted. This isn't a test. So what are you saying? Maya looked at him. Her gray-blue eyes were hard, certain. I'm saying this is real. The wind howled. The electronic jamming pulsed. And somewhere in Maya Reese's mind, a switch flipped. The careful, meticulous calculator who had hesitated in phase 2 began to see a pattern. The target zone was dead. No movement, no activity for 24 hours. Because the target zone wasn't the objective anymore. The base, she whispered. What? It's not the lane, it's the base. She broke the cardinal rule of a hide. She repositioned her rifle, angled it away from the distant target zone, traversed it hard left, toward Fort Carson, 3,000 meters away in the valley below. Reese, what are you doing? Ethan hissed. That's not the lane. OP4 will see. The OP4 is down there, she interrupted. Her eye was already pressed to the optic. Fort Carson sprawled in the valley. At 3,000 meters, it was just a collection of shapes, snow-covered buildings, vehicle parks, the main communications array. She dialed her scope's magnification to maximum, 25 power. The image wavered in the wind, swam in the snow. I see nothing, Ethan said, his own scope trained on the same area. Just buildings, just... Wait. Maya held her breath. Let the image settle. Her mind filtered the noise, the movement of snow, the shadows cast by clouds. There, near the main communications tower, a shadow that was too clean, too angular. I have a vehicle, she murmured, near the comms array. Ethan adjusted his scope. That's just the QRF. Striker, it's always... It's not a striker. Maya's voice was ice. Every hour she'd spent studying vehicle recognition was paying off now. The meticulous memorization Thornton had mocked. The wheel spacing is wrong. Hull's too low. 8x8 configuration. Sloped glasses plate. Her blood ran colder than the wind. It's a BTR-80. A what? Russian Armored Personnel Carrier. 14.5 millimeter turret. 8-wheel drive. Her voice was mechanical, clinical. It's not in U.S. inventory. Ethan went very still. Are you sure? There's another one. Maya's scope moved. Main gate, moving now. No markings. Winter camouflage, but it's too clean, too new. She could see it clearly now. The distinctive profile, the turret configuration, the movement patterns. These were not U.S. vehicles. They were not part of any training scenario. They were real. They were active, and they were sitting on top of Fort Carson's communication hub. The jamming signal wasn't a test. It was an electronic siege. I see it. Ethan's voice was hollow. Oh God, Reese, who are they? Maya didn't answer. Her eye was still welded to the scope. Scanning, processing. The base should be on high alert. Alarms, lights, men pouring from barracks, quick reaction force mobilizing. There was nothing. The base was asleep, oblivious. A single, terrible thought crystallized. They're already inside. She looked at her watch. 07:15. The 90-second target window. The ROE. The test. It was all irrelevant now. While they'd been isolated, freezing on the ridgeline, Fort Carson was being taken. Get your radio, she said. It's jammed. Not the short range, the SATCOM, the emergency beacon. Ethan stared at her. Understanding dawned. We break MCON. We fail the course. There is no course. Maya turned to him. Her face was hard. Not anymore. We're not trainees, Briggs. We're witnesses. And if we don't transmit, everyone down there dies. The wind screamed. The jamming pulsed. and the final test of Phase 3 began. Not the shot, not the stalk, not the hide, the choice. Pull the trigger or hesitate. Ethan reached for his pack. Ethan's hands shook as he fumbled with the frozen buckles. Not from cold, from the realization that the world had tilted, that training had become war. Maya kept her eye pressed to the scope. The motor pool, 300 meters from the communications tower. Movement there. 5 figures in white winter camouflage, moving with purpose. Professional spacing, tactical bounds. They weren't American. Motor pool, she said. Her voice was dead calm, clinical. 5 tangos, white camo, moving on the vehicle park. Ethan got the emergency SATCOM out. A bulky unit, olive drab, designed for line-of-sight satellite communication when everything else failed. He extended the antenna. His frost-nipped fingers struggled with the mechanism. They move like us, he whispered, watching through his own scope now. They move better than us, Maya corrected. She was right. There was no wasted motion, no hesitation. Perfect bounding overwatch, covering sectors, fluid, economical. These weren't insurgents, weren't militia. These were professionals. A door opened, the mess hall. A lone figure emerged, coffee mug in hand. Probably a guard on his rounds. Early morning patrol. He saw the 5-man team. The mug dropped. Maya watched the dark splash spread across the snow. The guard raised his rifle. He never got the shot off. A suppressed crack. So faint on the wind it was almost imaginary. The guard crumpled, folded in on himself like his strings had been cut. 2 members of the fire team didn't break stride, simply moved past the body. The rearmost member paused, pumped 2 more rounds into the fallen guard. Confirmation shots, then sprinted to catch up with his team. Brutal, efficient, professional. Maya's stomach lurched. The coffee she'd had 6 hours ago burned in her throat. They're executing them, Ethan breathed. They're executing the guards. Main gate, Maya redirected, forced the sickness down. The BTRs, they're repositioning. The 2 armored vehicles rolled forward, their treads barely audible at this distance. They parted to allow a 3rd vehicle through, a truck, equipped with a complex antenna array. It parked directly beside the communications tower, the source of the jamming. They're not just jamming, Maya said. Her mind was racing now, connecting pieces. They're inside the wire. This is a coordinated assault. The puzzle snapped into place with horrible clarity. The storm, the isolation of the sniper teams. The 24-hour comms dark rule. It wasn't Thornton's test, it was the enemy's opportunity. They'd use the sniper qualification course, knowing the base's best Overwatch assets would be deployed. Isolated, silent, blind. Thornton, Ethan said. His voice was frantic now. The other teams, they're all in hides. They don't know, they're Briggs. Maya's voice cut through. We have to warn them. If we transmit, he stopped, looked at her. His eyes were wide. They'll triangulate us. That ECM truck, it's not just jamming, it's listening. I know. They'll know this position. They'll come for us. I know. Maya turned from her scope, met his eyes. Gray-blue to brown. She saw the fear there, saw the calculation, the same math she was running. Transmit and die, or stay silent and watch Fort Carson fall. My brother hesitated once, Ethan said quietly. It destroyed him, destroyed his target, destroyed everything. His hands moved to the SATCOM, flipped the safety cap off the transmit button. I won't hesitate when it matters. He keyed the handset, his thumb pressed down. The transmission light glowed red. Blackjack, this is Victor 1-3. His voice was raw against the wind, desperate. Victor 1-3, emergency traffic. Fort Carson is under attack. I repeat, Fort Carson is under attack by unknown hostile forces. Static hissed. The jamming roared underneath. Evermate 30 to 40 hostiles. Russian equipment confirmed. BTR-80 armored vehicles. Probable Spetsnaz or contractor element. He was talking fast now, getting it all out. Base communications compromised. Comms tower occupied. Hostile ECM platform operational. Request immediate. The jamming changed. Stopped its broad spectrum pulsing. Focused. Narrowed. Like a searchlight swinging toward them. Hunting for their signal. They heard us, Maya said. The certainty was ice in her chest. Good. Ethan keyed the mic again. Blackjack, how copy? We are witnesses. We have eyes on. The world exploded. A high-pitched tearing shriek cut through the storm. A sound that arrived a split second before the impact. The distinctive incoming whistle of a mortar round. Maya knew that sound. Everyone who'd spent time in a combat zone knew that sound. It was the noise that separated the living from the dead. The round hit 50 meters short of their hide, detonated with a deafening crump that punched the air from her lungs. Snow and rock and ice erupted upward. Shrapnel snapped and whined overhead, cutting through the camouflage netting like razors. Incoming! Ethan screamed, dropped the radio, covered his head. They weren't witnesses anymore. They were targets. Bug out! Ethan was stuffing the radio back into his pack. His hands were frantic, shaking. Bug out! Bug out! There was no thought, only training. Only the desperate animal need to move. Maya grabbed her rifle, didn't bother to collapse the bipod, didn't bother to sling it properly, just grabbed 25 pounds of weapon and scrambled backward out of the hide. They burst into the open blizzard, the relative shelter of their cocoon gone, replaced by the full howling chaos of the storm. The wind was a physical wall. It shoved at them, tried to push them off the ridge. Snow pelted their faces like needles. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of rifle fire. Flat, hard, distinct from the wind. They're on the ridge below us, Ethan pointed. Suppressing. Maya couldn't see them. The snow was too thick. But she could hear the snap of rounds passing, the distinctive crack thump of supersonic bullets breaking the sound barrier near their position. They weren't aiming to kill, not yet. They were hurting, pinning, fixing them in place for the mortars. A second shell shrieked in. This one was closer, much closer. The whump of it leaving the tube was lost in the wind. But the incoming sound was personal, intimate, a promise of death with her name on it. Get down, Maya screamed. She dove, curled her body around the rifle, protecting the optic with her chest. The scope was everything. Without it, she was useless. The world flashed white. The explosion was a physical blow, a concussive hammer that slammed her against frozen ground. The air filled with the smell of ozone and hot metal and cordite. Rock fragments rained down, pattered against her back, her helmet, her pack. Her ears rang, a high-pitched whine that drowned everything else. The storm, the gunfire, her own heartbeat. She pushed herself up, tasted blood, bit her tongue in the impact. Briggs! Her voice sounded distant, muffled. Status! He was 10 feet away, a dark shape in the snow, not moving. Briggs! Maya scrambled toward him. Her knees sank into deep drifts. The rifle was a burden, an anchor. She refused to let it go. She reached him, rolled him over. His eyes were open, blinking, dazed. His mouth was moving, but she couldn't hear over the ringing. Then she saw his leg. His left leg below the knee was ruined. The utility trousers were shredded, soaked in dark arterial red that steamed in the cold air. A jagged piece of shrapnel, the size of her hand, was embedded in the snow beside him. Its edges were slick with blood. My leg! His voice cut through the ringing, low, wet, agonized. Reese! My leg! Her training screamed one word. Tourniquet. Her survival instinct screamed another. Run. The hunter team, the Spetsnaz element, would be moving on them now, bounding up the draw. They had maybe 5 minutes, maybe less. Okay, okay. Maya's hands were shaking. She unclipped the tourniquet from her belt. We're moving. I'm getting you out. No. He grabbed her wrist. His grip was weak, trembling. No, you're not. Shut up, Briggs. She ripped open his trouser leg. The wound was bad, arterial bleed. Shrapnel had severed the femoral. She could see the bright red pulse of blood with each heartbeat. She wrapped the tourniquet above the wound, twisted the windlass. Ethan screamed. The sound was raw, animal. The bleeding slowed, didn't stop, wouldn't stop, not without surgical intervention. Rifle fire intensified. Closer now, the thack, thack, thack of rounds hitting the rocks around them. They're coming. Ethan's voice was tight with pain and something else, a terrible clarity. They're bounding up the draw, 5 minutes, maybe less. I can drag you. Maya was looking for cover, for concealment, for anything. There was nothing, just exposed rock and snow. Drag me where? He grabbed her collar, pulled her face close to his. To another rock so we can die together? You're the asset, Reese, not me. Don't. Listen to me, he roared. The pain gave his voice a desperate edge. You have the rifle. You have the eyes. You saw what's happening down there. I'm support. I'm already dead. He shoved his pack toward her. The one with the SATCOM, the emergency beacon. Take it. Get to the fallback point, the nest, the concrete bunker. You know the route. Call it in. Get the cavalry. Briggs. That's an order, Private. He drew his M17 sidearm from its holster. His hand was shaking. From shock, from blood loss, from fear. Go! His words hit her harder than the mortar. Private. He was pulling rank, reminding her of the hierarchy, of the mission, the team, the mission, then the man. He was sacrificing himself, the one person who had believed in her process, who had told her that precision wasn't weakness. The snap of a round passing her ear, so close it tugged at her hair, made the decision. I'm sorry, she whispered. She grabbed his pack, grabbed her rifle, stood. Reese! He yelled after her. She looked back. One last time. He was propped on one elbow. His face was a mask of agony. Blood pooled around his ruined leg. The pistol in his hand looked absurdly small. 15 rounds of 9mm against assault rifles and body armor. You're the mathematician, he said. His voice was softer now, almost gentle. Don't calculate, just shoot. Make them count. She turned and ran. It wasn't a stalk, wasn't a tactical movement. It was a panicked, stumbling flight, fueled by adrenaline and guilt and the desperate need to survive. She plunged through waist-deep drifts, scrambled over ice-slicked rocks. Her lungs burned. The 70-pound pack, now 90 with Ethan's gear, was a monstrous weight, trying to pull her down, trying to kill her. The wind was a solid wall, tearing at her, screaming, a mirror of her own internal silence. Coward, hider, you ran. Behind her she heard them, shouts in a harsh language, not English, Slavic maybe, Russian. The hunter team, moving fast, unencumbered, closing the distance. The crack-thack of rounds impacted around her, kicking up snow, sparking off rocks. They were close, 300 meters, maybe less. She slipped. Her boot found a patch of sheer ice. She went down hard. Her hips slammed into granite. The pain was sharp, white-hot. The rifle flew from her grasp. She lay in the snow, the breath knocked out of her, gasping like a fish. The world was a swirl of white and gray and pain. This is it. I'm dead. I left him and now I'm dead. Through the snow she saw them, 3 figures, moving in the gray, fanning out, professional spacing, rifles at the ready, closing, 400 meters. She reached for her rifle, Her hand closed on the sling, started to pull it toward her. Pop, pop, pop. The sound was thin, pathetic against the storm. A pistol, an M17. It came from behind her, from the rocks where she'd left Ethan. The three hunters stopped, dropped to a knee, seeking cover. Their attention shifted instantly. Pop, pop. Ethan was firing at them, a pistol at 400 meters in a blizzard. It was useless, hopeless. The rounds weren't even close. It wasn't an attack. It was a distraction. One of the hunters raised his rifle, fired a short, controlled burst toward Ethan's position. The heavy thump, thump, thump of an assault rifle echoed across the pass. Pop. Ethan fired back. "You're the asset. Go!" His voice, his final order, it ripped through her panic like lightning. He wasn't just dying, he was buying her time, trading his last moments in agony in the snow for her seconds of escape. A new kind of cold flooded Maya's body. Not the wind, not the snow. It was a terrible, quiet, clarifying rage. The guilt didn't vanish. It calcified, hardened, transformed from panic into purpose. "You will not waste this." She grabbed her rifle. The pain in her hip was distant, irrelevant. She pushed herself to her feet, not as a fleeing victim, as a soldier. She didn't run down the mountain. That was the escape route. That was what they'd expect. She ran up. She scrambled up a near vertical chimney of rock. Using the hunter team's fire, now entirely focused on Ethan's position, as cover, she moved low, fast, animal, using every skill from the infiltration. She was no longer running from them. She was repositioning, moving to higher ground, to a position of advantage. The last faint pop of Ethan's pistol was cut short by a sustained burst of automatic fire. 10 rounds, 12. The sound rolled across the mountain, then silence. The wind howled, covered everything, but she knew he was gone. Maya clawed her way to a small ledge 200 meters above the draw where Ethan lay. She belly crawled into a cleft between two boulders. Snowdrifts protected her flanks, concealed her position. She deployed the rifle's bipod. The legs dug into frozen ground. She settled the buttstock into her shoulder. The familiar weight, the familiar pressure. She chambered around. The bolt slid forward with a solid click. She looked through the scope. The three hunters were standing in a loose triangle around Ethan's body. One of them nudged him with a boot, checking, confirming. The second was on his radio, reporting. The third was scanning, looking for her. They thought she was gone, fled, the threat neutralized. They were wrong. The panic was gone. The hesitation was gone. The hider was gone. There was only the predator and the mathematics of killing. The rage was a furnace. It burned away the tears, burned away the cold, burned away everything except the crystalline clarity of purpose. She lay in the cleft of rock. Her breath plumed white, then vanished in the wind. She was invisible, a ghost, a shadow given form and function. Below, the three men who had murdered her partner were exposed. Confident, arrogant. "You're a hider, Reese," Thornton's voice. This time it wasn't an insult. It was an affirmation. She was a hider, and they would never see her. Her eyes settled behind the scope. The world reduced to a 10-power circle. She began to calculate, not consciously, not deliberately. The math came to her like breathing. Distance, 420 meters. She ranged them against the reticle. Used the height of the man on the radio. 6 feet tall, standard. Wind, right to left, 20 knots. Gusting, 30. The snow showed her the pattern, the flow, the river of air. Temperature, 5 degrees Celsius. Air density, bullet drop. Uphill shot. Gravity assist minimal at this angle. The calculations weren't a struggle. They were simple, clear, like a door opening. Trust the process. Ethan's voice, a calm echo in the storm of her rage. The three men began to move. They split up. The radio man and one rifleman started moving down the draw, back toward the base. The third man, the team leader by his positioning, lingered. He was scanning the ridgeline, the place where she'd fallen. He was the smart one, the cautious one, the threat. She had to take him first. But they were separating, spreading out. She couldn't engage all three. Not at this range, not in these conditions. Wait. She watched them, patient. The team leader finished his scan, turned to follow his men. He was the trail element now, covering their withdrawal. They moved with the same fluid efficiency. Tactical bounds. One moved while two covered. They were professionals. This wasn't their first operation. But they didn't know this mountain. They didn't know this terrain. And they didn't know that Maya Reese had spent 30 hours studying every rock, every draw, every wind channel from her hide. She knew something they didn't. Lane 13 narrowed 500 meters downslope, a choke point where the canyon walls compressed. They would have to pass through it. And she had the high ground. She began to crawl backward, out of the cleft, keeping the rifle pointed at the enemy. She moved slowly, agonizingly. The pain in her hips screamed with each movement. She didn't care. Pain was just information. She repositioned, paralleled their movement, used the ridgeline to mask her profile. The wind was her ally. It covered the sound of her body sliding across snow. The blizzard broke her outline. 10 minutes of movement. It felt like 10 seconds. Time was elastic, meaningless. She found her new position. A narrow slit in the rock overlooking the choke point, 550 meters below her. She settled in, deployed the bipod. The legs found purchase in ice. She ranged the far side of the choke point where they would emerge. 550 meters. She dialed her elevation turret. Click, click, click. Each adjustment was precise, mechanical, final. She waited. The fury didn't cool, it compressed, became the stillness in her hands, the focus in her eye. She was not a trainee, she was not a hider, she was a sniper, and this was her hunting ground. The first two men appeared, moving into the choke point, dark shapes against white, moving with purpose. The team leader followed 30 seconds behind, maintaining interval, professional spacing. He was the anchor, the one calling the shots. Take him out and the other two would be disorganized, leaderless. She watched him through the scope. He paused, scanning the rocks above. He felt something, couldn't see her, but his instincts were good. Predator recognizing predator. Mine are better, she thought. She lined up the shot. Crosshairs settled on his center mass. The engine room, heart and lungs. She exhaled half her breath, found the natural respiratory pause, the moment between heartbeats when the body was perfectly still. Click. The memory tried to surface. Phase 2, the timer expiring, the failure. She ignored it, pushed it down. There was only the wind, the math, the target. The team leader turned, looking directly up at her position. He still couldn't see her, just scanning, checking. Now, she moved the crosshairs 2 mils left, into the wind. Her finger rested on the trigger. The cold metal. 2 pounds of pressure separated life from death. Her heart was a slow, heavy drum. Steady, controlled. She was no longer the prey. The trigger broke. The boom tore through the mountain air, a deep, concussive report that slammed the rifle butt back into her shoulder. The recoil was solid, real, violent. She didn't wait to admire the shot. Her hand moved on pure instinct, muscle memory from 1,000 repetitions. Up. The bolt handle came up. Back. The spent casing ejected. A spinning gold comma in the gray light. It disappeared into the snow. Forward. The bolt stripped a new round from the magazine. Down. Locked. Chambered. Ready. The entire action took 1 second. Conclusion before the sound of her first shot had finished echoing off the canyon walls. She was already back on the scope. The team leader was gone. A red smear marked the snow where he'd stood. The round had taken him center mass, dropped him instantly. The other 2 men were reacting. They dropped, scrambling for cover. But they didn't know where the shot had come from. The canyon walls played tricks with sound. The echo made it seem like the shot came from everywhere and nowhere. One of them, the radio man, broke cover, made a dash for a large boulder 20 meters away. Bad choice. He was 530 meters. Moving target. Wind. Maya didn't calculate. She knew. The math was instinct now. Pattern recognition. The wind at this range. The lead required. The drop. She held 2 mils left of his chest. Led him. Her finger closed on the trigger. Boom. The recoil jolted her. She was already cycling the bolt. Up, back, forward, down, back on target. The radio man was down. His legs tangled, his body still, the red spreading beneath him. 1 left. The 3rd man was behind a low rock, firing blind, spraying rounds in a wide arc up the canyon. Suppressive fire, panic fire. He was alone now. His team dead, his confidence shattered. Maya watched him, patient. The cold was nothing. The wind was nothing. She was the granite. She was the ice. Immovable, inevitable. He stopped firing. She could see him yelling into his radio, calling for support, for extraction, for help that wouldn't come. She centered the crosshairs on the edge of the rock he was hiding behind. Waited. He had to move eventually. They always did. He peeked, just a sliver of his helmet, his shoulder. She aimed for the rock, not for him. The shot released. Boom! The round hit the stone. A high-pitched ricochet, a spray of fragments. Not a kill shot, but it did what she wanted. It told him where she was shooting from, made him think she had his position zeroed. He broke, ran from the opposite side of the rock, trying to get to the canyon wall, to cover, to safety. He ran directly into the clear. 600 meters, full exposure. Maya shifted her rifle. The bipod legs skidded slightly on ice. She found him, tracked him. Breathe. She exhaled. The crosshairs settled on his running form. Led him by 3 mils. Accounted for his movement, for the wind, for the distance. The trigger broke clean. Boom. The cycle. Up, back, forward, down. She returned to the scope. He was a still, dark shape in the white. Face down, not moving. Silence. The wind howled, rushed in to fill the vacuum left by violence. The smell of cordite and hot brass hung in the air around her. Sharp, chemical, the smell of war. She had done it. 3 men, 3 shots, 3 kills. There was no triumph, no adrenaline rush, no sense of victory, just a vast, cold, profound emptiness. She had taken 3 human lives, not in training, not in simulation, real men with real families, who had woken up this morning not knowing they would die on a frozen Colorado mountain. The click she had feared, the hesitation, the frozen trigger, it wasn't about fear of acting, it was fear of this cold, mechanical efficiency, this ability to calculate death and deliver it with precision, this nothingness. She lay there, a minute, an hour. Time had no meaning. The storm didn't care, the mountain didn't care, the dead didn't care. She had proven Thornton wrong. She wasn't a hider. She wasn't prey. She was a killer. The thought settled on her, heavier than her pack, colder than the snow, more permanent than anything she'd ever known. She forced her body to move. The pain in her hip returned, sharp, demanding, real. She slid back from the ledge. Her limbs were stiff, wooden. She shouldered her rifle, picked up Ethan's pack. The weight of it, the weight of his sacrifice. She had to keep moving. The base was still compromised. The mission wasn't over. She pulled the SATCOM from the pack, the emergency radio, the one Ethan had used to call for help, to paint a target on their position, to buy her escape with his life. She switched it on. Static hissed, then a voice, ragged, strained, breaking up in the interference. Repeat, this is Blackjack Actual. We are pinned. Kilo Barracks. Any Victor call sign on this net. How copy? The voice was familiar, older, harder, exhausted. Sergeant Marcus Thornton. Blackjack, this is Victor 1-3. Maya's voice was a raw croak. I read you. A long pause, static-filled. Then, 1-3, is that Reese? Yes, Sergeant. What's your sit rep? Maya looked at the three bodies below, at the red staining the snow, at the rifle in her hands. Victor 1-3 is 1 KIA. The words tasted like ash. Briggs is gone. I engaged a three-man hunter team. They're neutralized. Another pause. Longer this time. When Thornton spoke again, his voice was different. Weaker. Strained. Copy 1-3. Good work. He coughed. The wet sound of blood in lungs. Fall back. Fall back to the nest. The concrete OP. We're pinned down. Heavy contact. Need overwatch. On my way. She didn't wait for a reply. She stowed the radio, forced herself to stand. 800 meters to the nest. The fortified observation bunker built into the reverse slope of the main ridge. It was supposed to be a training asset, a place for instructors to observe the lanes. Now it was a fortress, a refuge, maybe a tomb. The adrenaline from the firefight was gone, leaving a deep, trembling exhaustion in its wake. The cold flooded back in, the pain, the weight. She moved, not as a hunter, not as prey, as a ghost. She slid from boulder to boulder, used the swirling snow as camouflage. Every shadow looked like a Spetsnaz patrol, every sound like a shout. The emptiness of her actions settled deeper. The three men, the thud of impacts, the way they'd fallen. It replayed, a silent loop, inescapable. She had taken life, crossed a line that had no return. There was no click, just the boom, and the silence after, and the knowledge that she'd done it, would do it again if necessary. And Ethan, his scream, his blood in the snow, his final, desperate order. She had run, she had left him, she had killed for him. It didn't feel like justice. It felt like debt, a debt that could never be repaid. She half slid, half fell down a snow-covered scree slope, landed hard at the base. The nest was ahead, 50 meters, a low concrete slit in the mountainside, its steel door slightly ajar. She approached with her rifle raised. This was fallback, but it could be a trap. "Sergeant," she called. Her voice was low, hoarse. "Get in." The reply was a pained grunt. She slid through the narrow opening. The steel door groaned. She pushed it shut behind her. The thud of it locking felt final, like a coffin sealing. The inside of the bunker was dark, lit only by a single, flickering, red emergency bulb. It smelled of concrete and ozone and copper, the smell of blood. Sergeant Marcus Thornton was slumped against the far wall. His rifle lay across his lap. His left leg was propped on an ammo can. The trouser leg ripped open, a field dressing soaked through with dark, arterial blood. Shrapnel, same as Ethan. The mountain was trying to kill them all. He looked up at her. His face, illuminated by the pulsing red light, was gray, beaded with sweat despite the cold. The man who had stalked the gilly wash like a predator was shaking. The dynamic inverted in that moment. The student and the master. The hider and the hunter. The power had shifted. "You're alive," he breathed. It wasn't a question, it was disbelief. "You're hit." She dropped Ethan's pack, moved toward him. It's fine, he gritted his teeth. His hand tightened on his rifle. She ignored him, pulled her medkit. I need to see it, Sergeant. I'm fine, Private. But the word private had lost its weight. It was reflex, nothing more. She met his gaze. The Arctic blue eyes were clouded with pain, but also with something else. Raw, desperate, shocking, hope. He wasn't looking at his hider. He was looking at the only other friendly soldier on this mountain. She didn't ask again. She knelt. Her hands moved to the blood-soaked dressing. This is going to hurt. Just do it. As she worked, applying a fresh tourniquet above the wound, packing the injury with gauze, he spoke. His voice was tight, clipped. They came in under the storm, hit the comms, the barracks, all at once. Coordinated assault. Took us completely. He looked at her, his eyes focused, desperate. I was on the perimeter, morning patrol. Got caught by one of their mortars. He gestured weakly toward the bunker's narrow observation slit. The QRF scrambled, but they're 20 minutes out, maybe more in this weather. Maya moved to the slit, wiped the condensation from the ballistic glass, peered out into the storm. She could see it, 1,900 meters away, the target area, the place where they were supposed to take their qualification shot. And on the wreckage of the old watchtower, the simulated terrace compound, 3 figures were working, moving with purpose. They weren't setting up a training target, they were assembling something real. A heavy machine gun, the distinctive profile, the feed tray, the massive barrel, ADSHK, Russian 12.7 millimeter. Dushka, affectionately called the Widowmaker. They get that gun up, Thornton said, his voice ragged. It'll shred the QRF helis before they even reach the valley. 2,000-meter effective range, armor-piercing incendiary rounds. They'll control the high ground. He looked at her. His face was a mask of pained resolve. I can't make that shot, Reese. I can't even hold a rifle steady right now. Blood loss, shock. I'm done. He was handing it to her. The test. The mission, everything. QRF is 20 minutes out, he repeated, each word an effort. You have to stop them. You're the only one who can. Maya looked through the narrow slit. The world was a 1,900-meter problem, veiled in white. Impossible. The DSHK was taking shape, a dark, angular machine, death on a tripod. I don't know. The admission cost her. The wind, it's not just a crosswind, it's a vortex. The canyon, the ridge, the math is, she didn't say the word, impossible. Then don't do the math. She turned. Thornton was dragging himself across the concrete floor, his wounded leg leaving a wet, dark trail. He was moving toward Ethan's pack, the one she dropped by the door. Sergeant, don't move. You'll shut up, he grunted. His face was pale, slick with sweat. He ripped the pack open. His hands were shaking, not from weakness, from pained determination. He pulled out the spotting scope, Ethan's scope. He dragged himself to the observation slit, positioned himself below Maya. He propped his back against the icy concrete, his injured leg stretched out, useless, dead weight. He set up the spotter's tripod on his thigh, a horribly unstable platform. Trembling, but it was something. I can't hold a rifle, he gasped, his teeth gritted. But I can still run a scope. I'll call the wind. You just shoot. The word just hung in the air, as if it were simple, as if the next 90 seconds wouldn't determine whether 200 men lived or died. The dynamic in the small, cold bunker shifted one final time, settled into a new equilibrium. He was no longer the instructor. She was no longer the student. They were a team, a broken, desperate, 2-person sniper team. And they had 18 minutes to make the impossible possible. Maya moved back to the observation slit. The concrete ledge was solid, cold. She settled her rifle onto it. The bipod legs scraped against stone. The sound was final, committed. She pushed her body forward. The pain in her hip flared white-hot. She welcomed it. Pain meant she was alive. Pain meant she could still fight. She pressed her eye to the scope. 1,900 meters of chaos stretched before her. The aluminum skeleton of Thornton's spotting scope dug into his shoulder. He was shivering, not from cold, though the bunker was barely warmer than outside, but from blood loss, from shock, from the knowledge that everything depended on what happened in the next few minutes. "Victor, this is Blackjack." His voice was low, rasping. He was on the SATCOM, calling for support that might not arrive in time. "Request CAS. Danger close. Repeat, danger close." "How copy?" Static hissed in Maya's earpiece. A feed patched from his radio to her headset. The interference was thick, the jamming still active, but fragments came through. Her breath hitched, fogged the optic. "Don't fog the optic." She wiped it with her frozen glove. The rough wool caught on the elevation turret. The world reduced to a 10-power circle of gray rock and blowing snow. 3 targets. No, not targets. Threats. They were moving around the DSHK, locking the tripod down. One of them was hauling a green ammunition can, the distinctive Soviet-era container, 250 rounds of 12.7 millimeter depth. They were moments from being operational. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the relentless muffled sound of the wind battering the bunker's concrete walls. This wasn't the qualification course. The smell of cordite from her earlier shots was real, still clinging to her uniform. The blood freezing on Thornton's leg was real. The 3 men she'd killed were real. And this shot, this impossible, desperate shot, was real. The radio crackled. Thornton's voice was strained, terrified. "QRF is Winchester, out of fuel and ordnance. They can't engage, transport only. They're flying blind into that gun." He looked at her. His face was inches from hers in the cramped space. "Reese, if you can hear me, engage." She shifted the crosshairs. 1,900 meters was no longer a test, a number on a scorecard, a line item in her qualification packet. It was survival. For her, for Thornton, for 200 men in 4 helicopters who didn't know they were flying into an ambush. A new sound joined the wind. Heavy, methodical, rhythmic. Thump, thump, thump. The DSHK. It was firing, not at them. The rounds were going down into the valley, suppressing fire into the base, finding range. The gun crew was professional, efficient. They were zeroing the weapon, getting ready for the real targets, the helicopters. "They're operational," Thornton hissed. His eye pressed to the spotter scope. "They see the helos on approach. You have to take them now." The thump, thump, thump was a physical force. It wasn't aimed at the bunker, but the sound traveled. Heavy, pounding. A rhythm of death that vibrated through the concrete, up the bipod, and into Maya's bones. Each thump was a reminder, a countdown. The QRF was inbound, flying into that. "They're traversing." Thornton's voice was tight, clinical, trying to stay professional through the pain and fear. "Firing on the barracks now, the landing zone. They're clearing the field for when the birds come in." Maya's breath came faster. Her finger rested on the trigger guard. Not on the trigger, not yet. She had to be certain, had to have the solution. "Wind," she said. Her voice was flat, mechanical. "I need the wind." Thornton studied the downrange environment through his scope. She could hear his breathing, ragged, wet. He was struggling. "It's a nightmare," he spat. "Full value left to right, gusting to 40 knots. The downdraft from the ridge is hitting a crosswind from the canyon. It's just chaos." He paused, studying, his decades of experience processing what he saw. The way snow moved, the way the vapor trail from the DSHK rounds bent and twisted in the air. "Hold 4.5 mils left," he said finally. His voice was hard, certain. 4.5. Send it. 4.5 mils. Maya heard the number, processed it. Her hand moved toward the windage turret, then stopped. She watched. Not the target, the snow, the environment, the patterns. She'd spent 30 hours in that hide, 30 hours doing nothing but watching this mountain, this terrain, these wind patterns. She saw something Thornton didn't, couldn't, not from this angle, not with his scope's limited field of view. At 1,500 meters, the vapor trail from the DSHK bent hard left. The main wind, the prevailing pattern. That's what Thornton was seeing, what he was calling. But there was something else. At 1,800 meters, right before the target, the snow wasn't drifting left. It was swirling, dropping, then rising. A dead air pocket, sheltered by the terrain, followed by a sharp updraft as the wind hit the backside of the tower structure. Thornton's call compensated for the main drift. It was textbook, perfect for standard conditions. But it would be wrong. The round would sail high and right, miss by meters. "Reese, send it!" Thornton yelled, his voice cracking with urgency and pain. She took a breath, let it out slowly. She stared at the wind, at the snow, at the mathematics playing out in 3 dimensions across 1,900 meters of mountain air. "Trust the process." Ethan's voice, a memory, a ghost, an order. "Negative," she said. The word hung in the tiny bunker. Louder than the DSHK, louder than the wind, louder than her own heartbeat. Thornton turned. His face was a mask of disbelief, of fury, of desperation. "What did you say, Private?" "Negative, Sergeant." Maya's voice was perfectly calm. Her eye never left the scope. "Your call is wrong. I've been reading wind for 30 years. In Iraq, in Afghanistan, in deserts and flatlands." She cut him off. Not with anger, with certainty. "This is the Colorado Rockies. Different terrain, different patterns." Her hand moved to the turrets. Click, click, click. The adjustments were precise, deliberate. The downdraft is buffered at 1,500 meters. There's a dead pocket at 1,800, then an updraft just short of the target. She could see it, the pattern, the meticulous, patient observation, the very thing he'd called hesitation, the thing he'd mocked as hiding. It wasn't hesitation, it was certainty. "My call, 4.1 mils left, not 4.5. Her windage was set. "And 16 mils up, 2 clicks down from your elevation." Thornton's voice was incredulous, angry, afraid. "In this wind, you'll hit dirt. You're guessing. "I'm not guessing, Sergeant." Maya finally looked away from the scope, met his eyes. The Arctic blue was wide with pain and fury and something else. Doubt. "This is the math, the observation, the process." She held his gaze, unflinching. "You wanted a hunter who thinks. This is thinking. You wanted someone who trusts their calculation over fear." Her voice was hard now, absolute. "I've done the calculation. This is my shot." The seconds stretched. The thump, thump, thump of the DSAK continued. Death walking closer with each round. Thornton stared at her, really looked at her, saw something he hadn't seen before. Not the hesitant student from the Gillywash, not the girl who'd frozen on phase 2, not the hider. A sniper, with absolute mathematical certainty, with 30 hours of observation compressed into a solution, with the cold, hard absence of doubt. He let out a ragged breath, a sound of surrender, of acceptance, of faith. "Then take your shot, Sergeant Reese." He'd called her by a rank she didn't have, a recognition, an acknowledgement. Maya nodded once, turned back to her scope. The world narrowed again. 1,900 meters. Wind 4.1 mils left. Elevation 16 mils. Temperature 5 Celsius. Uphill shot. Coriolis effect. Spin drift. 1,000 variables compressed into the position of crosshairs. The DSHK stopped firing. The sudden silence was jarring, more violent than the noise. The gunner was upright, shouting at his assistant. The assistant was fumbling with a new ammunition can, trying to get the belt fed. They were exposed, vulnerable, for maybe 10 seconds. "Target," Thornton breathed. His voice was a taut wire ready to snap. Maya's finger was already on the trigger. The crosshairs were steady on the gunner's chest. Her windage was set. 4.1 mils left. Her elevation 16 mils up. The solution felt wrong, like jumping off a cliff and trusting invisible currents to catch her, trusting math over instinct, numbers over experience. Trust the process. Her father's voice, teaching her to shoot on the Montana ranch when she was 12. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Thornton's voice from the briefing. "This test isn't about math. We know you can do math." Ethan's voice from the hide. "You're not hesitating, you're being precise." Thump, thump, thump. Not the gun, her own heart, hammering against her ribs. She let out half her breath, found the calm center, the still point, the place where the math lived, where certainty replaced fear, where calculation became instinct. The trigger broke. The boom was absolute. The rifle slammed back into her shoulder, a brutal, comforting kick. The muzzle flash momentarily blinded her. A brief orange sun in the gray world. She did not blink. She held the trigger back, her body rigid, absorbing the recoil, her eyes still welded to the scope. Perfect follow-through. The target disappeared in the recoil. The world swam. She was already cycling the bolt. Up. The bolt handle lifted. Back. The spent brass ejected. A spinning gold comma in the red emergency light. It clattered against the concrete wall. Forward. The bolt stripped a fresh round. Down. Locked. Chambered. The entire action was mechanical, automatic, complete before the sound of her shot had finished echoing. She was back on the scope when the world swam into focus. An agonizing stretch of time. Elastic, distorted. 1,000, 1,000. The flight time at 1,900 meters was 2.5 seconds. It felt like an eternity, like the space between heartbeats expanded to hold lifetimes. Thornton beside her held his breath. His entire body was tense, rigid, willing the round to fly true. 2.5 seconds. The vapor trail of her bullet was invisible in the snow. There was no way to track it, to see it, to know. There was only waiting. Then, a puff of red. Not on the gunner, on the gun shield. Behind him. Miss. No. The impact was a split second before the gunner crumpled. The round had hit the assistant, passed clean through his torso, struck the DSHK's receiver, the heavy metal-on-metal impact. The gunner didn't fall from a bullet. He fell because his assistant collapsed onto him. Dead weight, momentum, surprise. And the gun went silent. The mechanical jam. The round had damaged something. Feed mechanism, bolt, something critical. Hit. Thornton's voice was hollow, choked, disbelieving. Target down. The gun is silent. Maya didn't move, didn't celebrate. She watched. The third Spetsnaz member, the security element, ran to the gun, shoved the two bodies aside, grabbed the charging handle. He was trying to clear it, to get it running again. Professional, trained, desperate. Maya centered the crosshairs on him. The calculation was already done. The wind hadn't changed. The distance was the same. Click, the sound of her bolt locking into battery. Breathe. She exhaled, found the pause, the stillness, the trigger released. Boom, the rifle kicked. Familiar now. She cycled the bolt without thought. Up, back, forward, down. A rhythm, a meditation, back on target. The third man was gone. He hadn't just been hit, he'd been thrown. The impact of a 175-grain bullet at 1,900 meters still carried tremendous energy. He'd been lifted, thrown backward off the tower structure, a limp shape vanishing into the white, into nothing. This time it was real, complete. The thump, thump, thump was gone. The only sound in the bunker was static from the radio, Thornton's ragged, shallow breathing, and the relentless, indifferent howl of the wind outside. It was over. A new sound joined the wind, heavy, rhythmic, growing louder. Wop, 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 wop. Helicopter rotors, multiple birds, the distinctive bass thump of Black Hawk blades beating the air. Birds, Thornton rasped. His head fell back against the concrete wall. His face was gray, translucent. Q, R, F. They're in the valley. They're... He looked at her. His eyes were no longer Arctic blue. They were just tired, clouded with pain and blood loss and a terrible, profound respect. Good shot, Reese, he breathed. Each word was an effort. Maya finally let go of the rifle, released it like it was burning her. Her hands, when she pulled them away, were shaking uncontrollably. The adrenaline evaporated, the rage, the cold certainty, all of it, gone in an instant, leaving a void. She didn't feel like a predator, didn't feel like a hunter, didn't feel like a mathematician. She just felt cold. She rested her forehead against the icy concrete ledge of the observation slit. The smell of cordite and her own sweat filled her nostrils. The vibrations of the approaching helicopters rattled through the stone. A distant promise. They were alive. Thornton's guidance, her shots, Ethan's sacrifice, it all meant something. But as she closed her eyes just for a second, she didn't see victory. She saw Ethan's blood in the snow, saw the 3 men in the canyon, falling one by one, saw the assistant on the tower, thrown like a doll. She saw the new, cold, empty room in her mind, a place where the math lived, where killing was just calculation, where human life was reduced to variables in an equation. She had passed the test, but the cost was written in bodies, in blood, in the space where hesitation used to live. The helicopter blades were a physical assault now. The whop, whop, whop was a hammer beating against the bunker's concrete, vibrating up through her boots. Blue and red lights flashed through the observation slit, painting the small space in a sickening, rhythmic strobe. The steel door burst open. Men poured in. Black tactical gear, QRF operators, medics. A chaos of movement and noise after the stillness. Hands on her, strong, fast. A medic appeared. His face was a grim mask, professional. He shined a penlight in her eyes. "Private, can you hear me? How many fingers?" He held up 2. Maya stared, didn't answer. Her ears were ringing. The medic's voice was distant, buzzing under the rotor wash. "She's in shock," he yelled to someone behind him. "Let's get her packaged." He reached for her rifle. Her hands, which had been shaking, locked onto the weapon's frame. Her grip was iron, absolute. "No." Her voice was barely audible, but her body communicated clearly. This rifle wasn't leaving her hands. "Ma'am, I need to secure your weapon. We're extracting you." He pulled. She pulled back. It was instinctive, animal. The rifle was the anchor, the proof, the weight that confirmed the last 48 hours had been real. "Medic!" A strained voice barked from across the bunker. "Leave it." The medic looked over. 2 other PJs were carefully lifting Thornton onto a lightweight stretcher. His face was a mask of translucent pain, white, bloodless, but his eyes were clear, fixed on Maya. "Sir, procedure states..." "Procedure be damned," Thornton hissed through gritted teeth. "It's hers. She earned it. Get me on that bird." The medic paused, looked from his bleeding instructor to the numb private clinging to her rifle. He made a choice, nodded sharp. Fine, but you're walking. Can you walk? Maya didn't answer. She just stood, used the rifle as a crutch. Her body was a single, unified ache. The hip injury was a white-hot spike with each movement. She stumbled out of the bunker, into swirling chaos. Two little birds were on the ground, their rotors spinning, kicking up a maelstrom of snow and ice and noise. QRF soldiers in black had formed a perimeter. The smell of helicopter exhaust and hot metal filled the air. She watched them load Thornton into the first helicopter. A second team of medics moved past her, heading up the draw with a folded stretcher, going for Ethan, going to recover his body. Maya stopped, watched them go. The place where she had run. The place where Ethan Briggs had bought her time with his life, had drawn fire with a pistol against assault rifles, had screamed at her to go while his blood pooled in the snow. It didn't feel like victory. It didn't feel like passing or failing. It felt quiet. A vast, hollowed-out quiet that the helicopter blades couldn't touch. "Ma'am!" A soldier grabbed her arm, firm but not rough. "We gotta go. We're not secure here. Area's not cleared." He guided her toward the second helicopter. She climbed in. Her movements were wooden, clumsy, like her body belonged to someone else. She sat on the cold metal bench, her rifle held upright between her knees. The weapon was the only thing that felt real. As the helicopter lifted, the ground falling away in a sickening lurch, she looked out the open door. She saw the bunker, small now, insignificant. She saw the tracks in the snow, the path of their desperate flight. She saw the dark, distant shape of the watchtower, its DSHK silent, defeated. The bird carrying Thornton banked, pulled alongside hers for a moment, formation flying. He was strapped in, a medic working frantically on his leg, IV bags hanging, but he wasn't looking at the medic. He was looking at her. Across 100 feet of open, wind-blasted air. He didn't smile, didn't give a thumbs up, didn't offer congratulations. He just held her gaze. And then he gave her a single, sharp nod. Not the nod of an instructor to a student. The nod of a professional acknowledging another. The nod of a warrior recognizing an equal. The nod that said, "You did it. You were right. I was wrong." It was all she needed. Maya turned her face from the wind, leaned her helmet against the cold aluminum bulkhead, closed her eyes, let the darkness take her. She was no longer a recruit, no longer a hider, no longer just a calculator. She was a sniper. The debriefing room was white, sterile. It smelled of industrial cleaner and fresh paint. The fluorescent lights above buzzed. A sound like an insect trapped in glass. A stark, irritating contrast to the roar of wind she could still hear in her memory. Maya sat at a plain metal table, her hands clasped on its surface. They were clean. A medic had scrubbed them. Removed the blood, Thornton's blood, Ethan's blood, and the gunpowder residue from under her nails. She was in a fresh utility uniform, stiff, uncomfortable. The fabric scratched against the thick bandage wrapped around her hip. A dull, hot throb beneath the tape. The door opened. A colonel entered. She'd never seen him before. His uniform was crisp. His face was lined with exhaustion. The deep fatigue of a commander who had almost lost his command. He held a tablet, sat opposite her. "Private Reese," his voice was quiet, controlled. "I've just come from Sergeant Thornton's post-op. He'll keep the leg." He was emphatic, wanted to write the after-action report himself. Maya nodded, didn't speak. The colonel looked at the tablet. 32 hostiles, Wagner Group contractors, Spetsnaz-trained mercenaries, all neutralized. Our communications are back up. The QRF you saved is mopping up the last scattered elements. He looked up from the screen. His eyes were analytical, searching. "We almost lost this entire facility because of your actions, and those of Corporal Briggs. We did not." Corporal. They'd promoted Ethan posthumously. Maya's throat tightened. Thornton's report is light on details. He's not known for his prose. The colonel leaned forward. He states you engaged a three-man hunter team, single-handedly. Is that accurate? Briggs bought me the time, Maya said. Her voice was flat, a stranger's voice. He drew their fire, gave his life so I could reposition. The colonel nodded slowly, made a note on his tablet. And the HMG, the DSHK heavy machine gun. He paused. 1,900 meters, uphill, in a blizzard. Thornton states you overrode his wind call. It wasn't quite a question, but it hung there, waiting. Maya finally met his gaze. She thought of the wind, the math, the swirling snow, the pattern only she had seen. Sergeant Thornton was calling the main wind drift, she said. Her voice was quiet but certain. He was right. His call was textbook, perfect for standard conditions. She paused, chose her words carefully, but he couldn't see the terrain effect. The dead air pocket at 1,800 meters, the updraft before the target. I observed it during the 30-hour overwatch in our final firing position. The colonel stared at her. He seemed to be processing, looking for something. Bravado, maybe. Instinct. The hunter mentality Thornton always talked about. He found none, just a technician, a mathematician, a woman who had turned observation into certainty. An updraft, he repeated, tasting the word, testing it. Yes, sir. Silence filled the room, stretched for a full minute. The fluorescent buzz seemed louder. Then the colonel pushed a small black rectangular case across the table, the kind that held medals, awards, recognition. The qualification course is officially concluded, he said. All other teams were extracted during the attack. You were the only one to engage the primary target. He paused. Or any target for that matter. Maya looked at the case. She thought of the 90-second window, the click failure, the terror of lane 13. It all felt like a lifetime ago, like a game played by children, absurd and distant. I don't, she started. It wasn't a test, the colonel agreed. His voice softened slightly. No, it was a battle. He opened the case for her. Inside was no metal, no ribbon, just a small piece of fabric, black and green, the subdued patch of a United States Army sniper. Simple, unadorned, earned. You passed, Private. The colonel stood. Sergeant Thornton had one more thing he wanted me to relay. He consulted his tablet, read directly. Tell her, good math, and tell her I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. The colonel left. The door closed with a soft click. Maya was alone again, in the white, sterile room, with the buzzing light. She didn't pick up the tab. She just looked at her hands, resting on the table, clean, steady now. They were the same hands that had scrubbed the ghillie suit, the same hands that had fumbled with the radio, the same hands that had cycled the bolt, again and again, 6 times, 6 kills. There was no glory in them, no honor visible. They were not the hands of a hero. They were the hands of a survivor. She had not won. She had endured. She had been the hider, the one who watched, the one who waited, the one who saw what others missed. She was the granite on the ridge, the quiet thing that had been there before the storm, and was still there long after the thunder had passed. It was the only victory that mattered. 3 days later, Maya found herself walking the corridors of the base hospital. Her hips still ached, but the sharp pain had dulled to a manageable throb. She could walk without limping, mostly. She'd been told where to find him. Ward 3, bed 7. Sergeant Marcus Thornton was propped up in a hospital bed. His left leg was elevated, wrapped in bandages and braces. IVs ran from both arms. Monitors beeped softly. But his eyes were clear when he saw her enter. He tried to sit up straighter, grimaced. Reese, don't salute. This isn't, just sit. She sat in the chair beside his bed. For a long moment, neither spoke. Briggs, Thornton said finally. His voice was rough. Corporal Ethan Briggs. I read the full report, what he did. He saved my life, Maya said quietly. Bought me time I didn't deserve. No, Thornton's voice was firm. He made a choice, the right choice. That's what I've been trying to teach for 30 years. Not to rush, not to freeze, but to be certain, then act without hesitation. He looked at her, really looked at her. I was wrong about you, Reese. I thought you were hiding, afraid, but you were hunting. Hunting for certainty in chaos. That's not weakness. He paused. That's evolution. That's the future of this profession. He extended his hand. It trembled slightly. From medication or emotion, Maya couldn't tell. Thank you for teaching an old dog new tricks. Maya took his hand, shook it. His grip was weak but steady. You taught me more, Sergeant, she said. You taught me that math and instinct aren't opposites. They're the same thing, just different languages. Thornton smiled. It was small, tired, but genuine. Ethan's brother Kyle, I read about him. What happened in Helmand? He paused, his expression sobered. Their father, Ethan Sr., served under me in Gulf War. Best spotter I ever had. He looked at her with those Arctic blue eyes, now softer. Until you. The weight of that statement settled between them. Legacy, continuity, the passing of something important. Get some rest, Sergeant, Maya said, standing. That's the plan. He closed his eyes. Oh, one more thing. She paused at the door. Welcome to the Brotherhood, Sergeant Reese. The rank again. Not official, not on paper, but real nonetheless. She nodded, left him to his rest. 6 months later, Maya stood on an instructor platform overlooking a rifle range. 21 new trainees sat in rows before her. Fresh-faced, nervous, eager. She wore the sniper tab on her shoulder now. Official, authorized, earned in blood and mathematics. Wind reading, she said. Her voice carried across the range, confident, clear, is a combination of mathematics and observation. You need both. One without the other is incomplete. A young trainee raised his hand, male, probably 22. Ma'am, what if the math doesn't match what you're seeing? Maya smiled. Then you trust your eyes. Numbers don't lie, but terrain does. Conditions change. Your job is to synthesize, to calculate, then to verify. She gestured to the range. A wise sergeant once told me something important. The mission matters, the team matters, but being right matters most. Not being fast, not being bold, being right. In the back of the range, leaning on a cane, Sergeant Marcus Thornton watched. A colonel stood beside him. She's a natural teacher, the colonel observed. She's better than I ever was, Thornton said quietly, pride evident in his voice. She doesn't train hunters or hiders. She trains complete snipers, thinkers who act, calculators who pull triggers. He watched Maya move among the students, correcting stances, explaining wind drift. Patient, thorough. On the range, Maya paused, looked back, saw Thornton watching. He nodded to her. She nodded back. Then she turned to her students. All right, let's move to the 1,000-yard line. I'm going to teach you the shot that saved 200 lives, and I'm going to tell you about the men who made it possible. One of the trainees, a young woman with sharp eyes, asked, Ma'am, is it true you corrected a legendary instructor's wind call at 1,900 meters? Maya considered the question, the memory, the moment. No, she said finally. I didn't correct it. I refined it. There's a difference. She looked at the mountains in the distance, the same peaks where she'd hidden, where Ethan had died, where she'd learned that mathematics and sacrifice were inseparable. Sergeant Thornton gave me 30 years of wisdom, 3 decades of experience in wind and weather and war. Her voice was quiet now, reflective. I added 30 hours of patience, of observation, of trust in the process. She met the trainee's eyes. Together, We got it right. That's the lesson. You don't work alone. You synthesize. You combine experience with observation, instinct with calculation, the old with the new. She picked up her rifle, the same weapon, the one that had made those shots. It was scratched now, worn, but maintained, cared for. Mathematics and instinct, they're not enemies, they're partners. She chambered around, the familiar snick. The sun was setting over the Colorado Rockies. The same mountains, the same wind, but different now, changed by what had happened there. Maya settled behind her rifle, looked downrange, calculated wind, distance, temperature. 1,000 variables compressed into certainty. And when the trigger broke, when the boom echoed across the range, it wasn't just a shot. It was a lesson, a legacy, a promise that precision and courage could coexist, that mathematics could save lives, that the quiet ones, the calculators, the observers, the ones who waited, had their place in war. She had been the hider, the one they doubted, the one who hesitated. But she'd learned the truth. Hesitation and calculation weren't the same thing. One was fear, the other was wisdom. And in the space between the two, in that narrow gap where certainty lived, that's where snipers were made. Not from instinct alone, not from math alone, but from both, together, inseparable. The round impacted downrange, dead center, perfect. Maya Reese stood, ejected the spent casing. The brass glinted gold in the fading light before disappearing into the grass. She had been the granite on the ridge, the quiet thing, the one who watched and waited and calculated. And she was still there, teaching the next generation that sometimes the quietest voice is the one that needs to be heard most. Because in the end, it wasn't about being the loudest, the fastest, the boldest. It was about being right. And that was the only thing that mattered.